Episode 23 with James Deakin.
You're listening to Kendrick Loves to Brand, the branding podcast featuring stories and lessons from entrepreneurs and brand builders so you can get inspiration, insights, strategies, and tactics as you create your own game-changing brand.
So my guest for today is someone that I would say doesn't need an introduction, but especially if you live in Metro Manila and you've experienced the horrendous traffic, and not because he's the cause of it, but he's actually one of the few knights in shining armor who's helping us make it better. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you, James Deakin.
Thank you, Kendrick.
Welcome to the show, James.
It's great to be here.
I've been wanting to meet you and talk to you because I think right now you're at the top of my list in terms of the people that I think just is very authentic in how you approach your work, how you approach your sort of responsibility as a personality. You're really trying to make things better, and you're at top of the list of people who I'd be very, very shook, in the words of the millennials now, na if you turn out to be less than what we all perceive you to be, which is like a knight in shining armor, an example for everyone. So there, I guess let's start from the very beginning. Before all of that, before you reach this level, how did you start? What's your origin story?
Oh, okay. Well, firstly, it's a lot of pressure. What you said about the people perceiving and don't let us down, will be shook. Obviously, I do my best to not do that. But the origin story is basically, I guess, like most stories that I find fascinating of people who have gotten into a career that is usually they stumbled into it. So I didn't have any plans to get down this road. My humble beginnings were, the very super brief early part is born in Manila, Filipino mom, British dad, stayed here from 0 to 14. Then when they split up, single mom, had sort of hard time with 3 kids, 3 boys, so we migrated to Australia. In Australia, we tried to set up a whole new life there, and it was challenging, to say the least. We swapped a set of challenges here for a very unique and different set of challenges there. So it was pretty tough because I was 14 when we moved over, coming from this nice Manila lifestyle. Even though, we had sort of had this roller coaster because my dad left financially, our lives kind of were thrown around. But, we still had the memories of those great years growing up in Manila private schools and nice country clubs, friends with beach houses, etc. And then, like that, parents get split up. You're 8 years old. You're used to this life. I'm not saying we were rich, but we were comfortable. And from there to, oh God, how are we going to pay the rent? How are we going to pay the school? School started kicking us out because my mom couldn't afford to pay anymore, and it was tricky because you got to keep up with this whole lifestyle and this whole perception, like you just started with. Perception is, in Australia, the difference there was you could get a job at McDonald's, you could get a job as anything, waiter, dishwasher, and no problem, you'll make ends meet. Whereas in the Philippines, it's very different. And if you look like me, it's not as easy to just walk into McDonald's or Jollibee and get a desk job there or a counter job. And if you did, it may not pay you what you need. So these are all sort of things that we were thrust into, because when we went to Australia, it was very humbling, extremely humbling experience. Sadly, I couldn't finish school. I was able to get as far as first year high school. And after that, just had to continue as a dishwasher from 14, going on till, as long I just stayed in the workforce from 14 onwards. And then got married there, came back here. So in Australia, my working life was pretty much blue-collar stuff. It was waitering, dishwasher, construction, selling used cars, washing cars. I had a little small detailing business towards the end there. Gave all that up to come to Manila because I had this dream of going on radio. I had this itch I wanted to scratch. It was something that I felt, if I don't do this now, I'll never do it, right? And I had no kids yet. We were just newly married, so I just said, let's take the risk, And Manila's really my home. I mean, I love Australia, it's second home, but it's still second home. I'm a foreigner here. I'm more of a foreigner here than I am in the Philippines. So we moved back, basically took a huge bet because we didn't have there was no guarantee of anything. There was no promise of a job. There was just family here.
How old were you?
I was 26. So 14 to 26, 0 to 14, Manila, 14 to 26, Australia, 26 onwards, back in Manila. My mom and my two brothers had already migrated back. So I was the last one left. And then I came here and I wanted to go on radio. My dream of going on radio was eventually realized in 1999. So about less than a year after I landed, I got that dream job. Problem lang was the dream job didn't pay so well. It paid like $8,000 a month.
Wow.
And so I didn't put that into the equation. I didn't kind of see that one coming. I was like, oh God, I didn't really. Who would have thought that it would have paid less than $200 a month? So I had a bit of a predicament because I was in this great job that I love, but just I knew I couldn't support a family on. And that's a really tough predicament to be in as a father, because you're like, I had this feeling that if given the opportunity, I knew I could do something and be something. I knew that. I had that feeling. It was, no matter how broke I was, and when we came back, it was broke. And when I talk broke, I'm talking not that I couldn't afford to buy the shoes I wanted. Couldn't afford to live in a house. I couldn't afford to rent a place. Got evicted out of an apartment. Didn't have anywhere to go. That's the level of broke we're talking about. So you're now at this situation where you're looking at this job that you know that you have, you trust in yourself. You've got this bug inside you, this burning little fire that given the opportunity, you will shine. You will make a name for yourself. You believe that. You go to bed believing that. You wake up believing that. But reality is you're on $8,000 a month.
Yeah.
You know how hard it is to dream and, more importantly, convince people to support you when you can't even basically get the basics of your family done. So it was the toughest decision I had to make back in 2001 when I left the radio station with nowhere to go. And that sounds crazy. It's because, one, I know how myself works. My DNA, the way I'm sort of made up, is that I don't exactly like this part of myself, but I kind of need to be pushed off the ledge. If I plan too carefully, it doesn't normally happen.
No safety nets.
No safety nets, and I kind of need that pressure. It's a pressure I hate, but it's a pressure I need. You can even go down to, let's say, my writing. It's the same thing. I every time I hit a deadline, I wait till the last minute, and I tell myself every time, start 2 days earlier. Just start 2 days earlier. It still takes you the same amount of time to write the article, but if you started a day or two earlier, you'd finish a day or two or right on time. Why do you wait? And you know what? I'll start 2 days earlier. It'll take me longer. It'll take me 3 days to finish the article. I don't know why, but I need that. I need the editor breathing down my neck. And I finish it. So the same with my life. It was like if I had stayed there and thought about it, all that, I knew that I would still be there. Because comfort zones are a very deceptive and dangerous place if you think about it, because it lures you in, and it disguises itself. So I had to break that comfort zone by telling they offered me another contract, and it was $12,000 a month by that stage.
Okay, 50%
so like 50%. But still, so when they gave me a $12,000 a month contract, and it was for another 2 or 3 years, I looked at it and I thought, okay, if I sign this now, I know I'm probably going to be here for the rest of my life. And so I just said no, and they were like shocked. And then I said, I'm sorry, I can't. And they're going, where are you going to go? I said, I don't know. It's up to me. I mean, let me worry about that. And by stepping out into that giant, big abyss and big leap forward, I guess I put myself out there. I guess that's part of your commitment. When you commit to something, the universe tends to conspire behind you because it sees a direction.
Mm-hmm.
And that was full commitment because it was literally blindfold, take a step off, and see where it takes me. And thankfully, when I took the step off, I landed. Someone called me up. It was a friend of mine from childhood who's just out of the blue. It was so random. He said, hey, I know you work for the radio stations. He hadn't even known I left yet. But do you think you could contribute to this magazine I'm thinking of starting? Wala pa eh. He didn't even have a magazine yet. They didn't have business cards. They didn't have a published, nothing. So I was like, well, yeah, sure, what is it? And he goes, oh, it's a car magazine about cars and blah, blah, blah. And I know you love cars, so why don't you try it out? And I said, sure. So I wrote a contributed piece. That's it. After writing that piece, I submitted it. The editor called me up and he said, hey, I read your piece. I think he was polite, so he didn't say how bad the commas and the grammar was, but he said there's something about it. I feel it. As a car enthusiast, there's something you've got there. And that was obviously passion. So all of the things that I was lacking in terms of structure, sentence, grammar, all that, there was a level of authenticity to it because it was really organic. The passion was organic. So he said, do you want to join us? I mean, like, would you consider joining us as our managing editor? And I remember the joke was, I almost told him, look, I don't even know if I can spell that, so much less do that. What are you talking about? And I didn't want to tell him I didn't finish first year high school because that was a great insecurity I had. I mean, I walked around with that secret. I never lied about it, but I, as much as possible, hid it from you. I would find every which way to not answer that question. But if you asked me directly, I would definitely tell you. If I had to put it on a piece of paper, I would write down, yeah, that was my highest achievement was first year. But I would obviously, for good reason, in your 20s, you're feeling terribly insecure.
Yeah, of course.
So I didn't tell him, he didn't ask, and I just got into that managing editor role.
So from a contributing piece...
One contributing piece to managing editor in one... He hadn't even published it yet.
Wow.
So it was literally, he had read it and said, called me up and he said, do you want to be managing editor? And I was like, I mean, it sounds glamorous, but the pay was $10,000 a month. So I jumped from 12 to 10. I went from 8 to 12 and 12 to 10, you know. So talk about a professional loser, you know. It's like you couldn't design a worse package for yourself. You're going backwards. Yeah. But I remember looking at that when they offered me 10 grand. I went, what the fuck? I said, okay, listen. I could see this editor, and the editor wasn't my childhood friend. My childhood friend was a different person who called. The editor was somebody I'd never met before. But you know, when you relate to a person, you trust that person's got the same vision as you. You're made up of the same kind of substance. He was also a Phil Am, kind of similar story to me. Grew up here. Fell on hard times, went to the States, finished school there, flipped burgers during college. So he went through what I went through. Then he came back, and then he started his firm as a designer, architect, and urban planner. But it was tough for him. So he would like commute, take jeeps. And this guy's fairer than me. He looks more foreign than I do. And him and his pure American father would jeepney with their rolling, you know, their plans, and they would... You know, when you're going to, let's say, big meetings with your rollered plans and jump out of a Jeep, it's difficult, you know. I mean, you shouldn't judge, but people do. And in business, they'll be like, whoa, hang on a second. It's a part of the perception. Maybe we can offer this guy half of his Jeep lang yan.
Yeah.
And so I related very much to this guy because he kept his pride, his standards, his ethics and all that, despite the fact that he had a similar type of struggle as I did. So I said to him, you know what? All right. I said that the 10,000, you know, you can't raise a Cabbage Patch doll on that, no? But I'll take it on one condition, right? And I said, if you just give me a car. I'm not saying to keep, just assign me a car, because you can't have a managing editor of a car magazine nag-jeep.
Yeah.
Right? So if you want your managing editor to have a respectable whatever, I just want to make sure I have a car. And then that way I don't have to worry, because we had a small little Mazda 323 taxi model, really cheap, basic one, but I wanted my wife to have that so that she could take my kid around, all that. I won't have to bother. So I'm not going to share with that. I'll have a car. And he said to me, okay, deal. I'll give you my word. And we shook hands. I remember where it was. We were in the fort. He shook hands and said, okay, deal. $10,000 a month, and I will arrange a car for you. But what was funny is, at the time when we had that meeting, there was laughter in the meeting. It's like, it almost was like, oh my God, how trivial and this guy, a car is on. Because we're a car magazine, and a lot of the partners had money, and it was a lot. The investors had lots of money, so it was almost like, dude, I have cars everywhere. I don't even know why you're. I don't even know how many cars I have in my own garage, and you can take one of those and all that. I was like, look, I don't care what it is as long as I have one. Long story short, a week went by, 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks went by, a month went by, and wala pang car, right? But Ken would always come up and tell me, hey, I'm working on it. And one day, I remember, I think it was maybe 6 weeks after or something like that, Ken came up to me and he said, James, we're having a small problem with your car. I've tried to do this, I've tried to do that. We're looking at leasing, but it's, long story short, here's my car. I said, wait, no, Ken, what are you doing? Wait, no, hang on. He goes, no, James. I promised you a car, and a man is only as good as his word. Here's my car. I said, Ken, I'm not taking your car, because I know that no, it's out of the question. And it wasn't even it was a 92 Corolla GLI. It's not exactly, and that was his only car at the time. So I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'll work it out. At the end of the day, I made a promise. I got to keep a promise. If I don't keep this promise now, I don't blame you if you don't believe any word I say. So reluctantly, I took his car, and that developed this huge trust for this guy. And also in the magazine, I thought, now this is a man of his word. This is also a man of his word, a man with vision, because he could see so far down the line. And he was the one that basically, if there was a mentor, it was him, because he really took me out. And I think everyone needs that. The reason I'm telling you this backstory is because, as wonderful as it would be to take full credit and say, oh, I did this and I did that, this is my story of success, I think every story of success needs a guide or a mentor to enable you to achieve your dreams. And Ken was that for me, because he stood backstage. Even though he was the owner of the magazine, and even though he loved cars and even wrote about cars better than I did, so he had the skill, he knew more about cars than I did, but yet he put me in front. And when there was any opportunity, like I remember driving an F1 car, like a Formula One car, that's a once in a lifetime. There are professional race car drivers that have never set foot in a Formula One cars. And we're talking high-level international races, never set foot. So for you to be given as a journalist the opportunity to drive a Formula One car in a racetrack in France, I remember when that opportunity came by and Ken said, okay, I'm assigning you. I didn't want to say how I was frozen. I didn't want to say anything, because just in case he might change his mind. But I remember saying, Ken, why? I don't get it. This is your company. I know how much you love to drive, and you've got the skills. Why wouldn't you take it? And he said to me, because you're the best person for the job. Wow. James, I hired you to be and personify this magazine and to be the face. If I'm going to take all those opportunities away from you, that's not exactly... So this is the level of forward thinking that the guy had. I mean, to be able to be that unselfish and say, no. This is the plan. You're going to personify the magazine. I'm trying to build a base around your following. They are not interested in what I have to say. Okay? You are the face. So this allowed me to sort of pick up some really good habits. And when you learn from somebody with that kind of maturity, that kind of, it started to really help shape me. And those were my formative years in the magazine, of about 12 years I spent there. Not all of those years were with Ken. He sold out somewhere around after about 6 years or something like that. But I stayed there. I ended up building up a bit of a name there, but in a very niche circle of car enthusiasts. So C Magazine was very, very much into a niche market of hardcore car enthusiasts that really didn't want to read beyond the fluff. They wanted to read real reviews with people who really knew, and it was great. And then I remember from there, if you really want to go through the whole process, it was professionally I'd hit this, wow, I can't believe I'm in this spot now. I'm finally okay. I was no longer on 10,000 a month. Let's go down 6 years down the track. I'm earning enough to put my kids into good schools. They're all in private schools. We live in a private subdivision. Once again, we're not rich, but we're comfortable. And bills are paid, but more importantly, you're doing the job that you love. You're doing the job of your dreams. But may kulang pa. There's always a kulang. Because now that I had achieved all of that, and through the help, of course, of some people, one of them being Ken, I remember also I was in some kind of racetrack somewhere in the world, and we were driving all these really nice cars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and I remember thinking to myself, what would happen if I crash right now and die? I know it's a morbid thought, but if it was to all end today, how would I be remembered? And you've been given this incredible gift, platform, blessing, however you want to call it, but you have. Whether you've worked for it or not, it's not the point. The thing is, you have this gift, which is an audience. You're doing what you love to do. What are you giving back? And this started to, I guess, eat away at me a little bit. And I remember thinking, yeah, no. I mean, is that how I want my obituary to read? It's a guy that drove Ferraris and drove an F1 car, and I heard he was a good driver, and he once did a lap record in some unknown track of somebody that didn't care about. This is not life-changing stuff. So that's when I made the big pivotal point to divide my voice and share it with the community, because I realized that if I'm going to earn money from this, and this is how I feed my family and put food on my table, that same effort and that same blessing and skill should be given back to the community. Because for you to achieve this kind of happiness and fulfillment, you need purpose higher than yourself. And that's where I felt I could do a lot of good. So I started speaking more about the traffic situation, road safety, things that could leave a legacy. And one of the first big things I did with my brother was in 2011 and 12, there was a huge problem with drunk driving. And we noticed that a lot of the reason that our friends and people we knew were driving home drunk were not necessarily because they were bad people, not necessarily because they were just unconscionable people, but more so because they didn't know what to do with their car. That seemed to be the biggest reason why a lot of good, moral, God-fearing, tax-paying, law-abiding citizens would just jump in a car and drive home drunk. It's because I didn't know what to do with my car. I didn't plan to get drunk tonight. I just had a few too many, but then now it's parked here and I have to go home. If I leave it, if I take a taxi, tomorrow I have to come back and pick it up. Tapos overnight parking, tapos baka mawala, vandalize. So we said if we could solve that problem, maybe we could make an impact. And so we started cracking our heads on how to solve this issue. And in the UK, in Australia, Korea, and I think a couple other countries, they have this driver on call service where if you're in a bar and you're too drunk to drive, the bartender usually will call a local guy on a motorcycle. In Australia, it was a folded motorcycle, and they would come to the pub and they would pick you up. They would put their folded motorcycle in your car, drive you home, and then they would ride home in their own little folded bike, right? And it worked perfectly. But it worked perfectly there because, number one, the society structure is completely different. There's an element of trust with strangers that we don't have.
I was just going to say the trust issue.
Yeah, there was. So that, imagine we could put two guys on a motorcycle instead of the folding one. But can you imagine the effect of two guys riding in tandem showing up when you're drunk? No, not going to work. So we were cracking our heads on how to solve this problem. How do we solve the trust issue with a stranger? And that's when I said, who's somebody that you would trust implicitly if you didn't know them? There's only about less than a handful of people in the world I can think of. One of them is a paramedic, because you'll have to trust this guy to cut you out of a burning wreck, or wrapped around a tree or something, or open up your chest on the side of the road and give you open heart massage or something like that. So this would be a person you would trust. and my brother happened to own Lifeline Ambulance. So I said, why don't you incorporate this service into your service? Because that way you've already got the fleet out there. So you've got Metro Manila, a big footprint covered, and all you're doing is you are sending your staff to prevent the accident rather than respond to it.
Yeah.
So if you're really even thinking from a business point of view, that's where you're going to be. You can save actually a lot of time, grief, money, and all that if you went and people made that call and said, I need to go home from Makati to whatever, Alabang. It's a flat rate of $500. That's it. Doesn't matter which point to point to Metro Manila. It's not designed to make money. It's just designed at that point. The price bracket was about a bucket of beer that we pegged it at, because it had to be something also that you're willing to spend, but we didn't want it to be abused, because you don't want to be used as a drunk driving service. This is really, it's an ambulance service that provide this level of extra for the community. No questions asked. We won't say, why are you drinking? Nothing. Just driver on call. You don't even have to be drunk. You could be feeling bad. You could have gout. Service is still available now. We don't market it because, for reasons that, number one, it's not the core business. Two, we don't want people to sort of see that we're promoting drunk driving. Uh-huh. But the reason I'm telling you this story is because after doing that program, I really felt that I had, changed I'd grown so much, because this feeling that giving back to the community and being of use to the community was so intoxicating almost. I was like, wow, this is what it's all about. You really got to balance your voice and your gifts, because this is what's really going to matter in the end. If you just saved one life out there, just one, it was all worthwhile. And that cannot possibly, any of the Ferraris and F1 drives can never compete with this. So this became almost somewhat addictive for me, because after that, the Yolanda thing happened, and we did the driver program where we called it Oplan Hatid with a few friends, and we drove people home from Villamor to wherever they needed to go. And it was all volunteers, and it was all free. And in 2 weeks, we had signed up 2,000 drivers and drove 20,000 home. It was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever been a part of, because that was pure volunteerism mixed with the Bayanihan spirit, mixed with social media, it was just an incredible moment in time. I don't think we'll ever be able to duplicate. But it got me going. That was where I started thinking, you know what? This is what I feel I was born for. And if anyone can get to that moment in their life, that point where you finally realize why you're put on here on earth for, I don't think there can be a more satisfying feeling than that. Because it's really what it's all about. At the end of the day, that's literally what it's all about. I'm not overly religious, I'm not overly philosophical, I'm not overly deep, but that's really what we're chasing. I think it was, I don't know how the saying goes, but it's something that I think it's Shakespeare said, the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. Something along those lines. I thought that's perfect. That's really what it is. Once you find it and you find your gift, give it away. And this is where you see the greatest people of all time, whether they're singers, actors, philanthropists and stuff. They found their gift and they give it away. And that is basically the origin story.
Nice. When you said earlier about that, even back when you were young and you were going through that hardship, you mentioned something like you always had this feeling that you were meant for something. Where do you think that came from? Like, was it something that, did your mom tell you that? Or?
Oh yeah, my biggest fan. My mom would be like, I hope she doesn't watch this, because she gets very sensitive about these things. But I think it's very hard to explain to her that it's what she perceives as her greatest failures to be her greatest strengths, because without the hardships that we went through, because she's always the type of person is, if only, my dream was only to be able to give you what you needed, to buy you your first home, to buy you your first car, to be able to send you to college and all that. It's like, yes, and then we would have never learned how to do it ourselves. You don't understand what you gave us was the capacity to do it ourselves. There's nothing more fulfilling than that. And two, it's just also, she would give us this encouragement and give you hope. When you don't have anything, hope is all you've got. Yeah. And hope is very powerful. So when you eventually do get sick, that's all you got to cling to. So it means more to you, I think, than to somebody that doesn't need it. So it's real. It's the only thing sometimes that's real to you is hope. Because if I had told myself that maybe I was not that person that my mom thought I could be, what's the point? What's the point? It's pretty horrible where I am right now, and if I have nothing to look forward to,
yeah.
So no, I mean, I couldn't even say I was even aware of this, but I'm just talking with the benefit of hindsight. That no, hope is really something that I think is more prevalent in people who have not had much or lost it or been really broke and had to really struggle, and that becomes a fire that's very, very powerful. But I always had that feeling because I always knew that one, when you have somebody so supportive, your mother always repeating, being your fan, saying, "Oh, tell that joke again," or "Tell that story," and she's always laughing and always, you can't help but feel like, And so eventually, when I was given the stage, it became natural. And another thing is, in my family, we all tend to talk a lot and talk at the same time and all this. So for you to get that airtime in the dinner table, you have to dig pretty deep. You can't just interrupt the conversation just to say basically nothing. So it even taught me later on how to do public speaking, how to be interesting.
What do you think? What do you think you're better at than most people?
Communication. If I was really to boil it down to one thing, it would probably be understanding how people feel and articulating it. Because even with cars, when I was writing about cars and I was with the #1 car magazine at the time, and you could have all sorts of bragging rights, whatever, but I knew in my heart that the people around me knew more about cars than I did. I knew that. I never ever pretended that I was more of an expert than anyone else. I know more than Joe Blow on the street.
Yeah.
But in the industry, I don't even think I'd put myself in top 10. But it's not important. What's important is who could communicate it. Because some of the people who knew everything about cars, they sounded like the owner's manual. And nobody wants to read their owner's manual. But if you can somehow communicate a feeling, you can articulate a feeling of somebody and put it out there, that's what I feel I do better than most people.
Where do you think you got that from?
One is probably from the dinner, when you go back as early as the dinner table, trying to compete for attention and airtime in the family, that everyone's talking and stuff. So that's one. You really learn how to sell your story and package it, and because otherwise, and I'm just the youngest in the family, so the youngest gets the least airtime by default. So when you cut in, you better have a song and dance, man, because you're gonna get a backhand from your older brother, like, "Tama na yan, Totoy."
Yeah.
And that's one. Number two, also, I was able to, when you go through feelings yourself, and you go through hardships like, not finishing school, having to work as a dishwasher at 14, being evicted out of home, you're very in touch with your feelings. So I've always had that. I've always been very sensitive to that and in touch. And then I also can credit it partly to my different types of work that I did, because I had to do things like, without an education, you're so vulnerable, you feel so insecure that there are not many jobs that you feel qualified for. So you have to create jobs for yourself, right? Outside of where they would ask for your resume. So nobody's going to ask you for your resume when you stand out front, let's say a shop front in Australia, I'll never forget this, and stand there for 8 hours a day holding a microphone selling suits. I mean, that was probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever done in my life, because if you picture it, let's say High Street, all right. Picture High Street in BGC, right? It's an open area and they have shops and all that. And you picture one guy standing outside a menswear shop going, it's all got to go here at Tony Barlow's Menswear. We got Daniel Husher suits at 50% off. Come down and see our silk ties. We've got 70% off that. Now, that makes you feel like that gives you this communication skill that you can't learn anywhere else, because for 8 hours, you're rambling. And you got to ramble like basically from 0 to 100 in instant. Like, give you a microphone, go, sell. And you'd be like, and you just got to stitch sentences together. So it allowed me to think on the fly. It allowed me to be articulate. It allowed me to be projection, learn how to project my voice, learn how to sell with your tone of voice, because it's not necessarily always what you say, it's how you say it. The tone of voice that you have, those are most of the communication points that we pick up from our body language and tone. You develop that when you're selling to an audience of people that don't see you, but they hear you. And so those three things, I would say, combined, allowed me to probably develop that skill better than most people.
Were you able to sell any suits?
A lot.
A lot.
A lot. I remember I was on $35 an hour.
Wow.
That's 1990. At $35 an hour, that's a lot of money. A lot of money back then. And that was the most money I think I've ever earned in Australia, was during that time.
Wow.
But it was tough. 8 hours a day of doing that. That was really tough. Then I did telemarketing. I did all these other really crappy jobs but these crappy jobs all led somewhere, because they all teach you something. And this is something that I try to teach my kids and anyone that asks. If you're trying to build yourself up, there's no job that's too menial or too... Because had I had that in my head going, I was born for better things than dishwashing, I don't think I would be too far off. I think I would be under my rights to say that. I mean, I went to, at least my first part of my school, it's all private schools and stuff like that. I could have said, I'm cut out for better things than dishwashing. I probably wouldn't have made it to waiter if I thought that. Because I'd be saying, wow, you want to move up, but you can't even do this crappy job well. Wow, galing mo, ah. Wow, learn. You know what? Before you move to the next level, do this one first. Don't think that you can jump to the next one if you can't even do this one properly. So you do it. Just your employer wants to see work ethic. They want to see that whatever challenge they put in front of you, you take seriously. Even if you don't like it, even if you think you're cut out for better things, that's the job at hand. You show responsibility. And it trained the work ethic in me. That's one thing I'm very grateful to Australia for, is it really gave me a work ethic that I don't think I could have formed in many other places.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges for like, when we're young, we feel entitled to certain things, diba? Na, why would I do this job if I can do this? So it's refreshing to hear that from somebody. Like I said, you could have said that, you could have thought that, but you went through the whole, basically you started from the bottom, work your way up in different jobs. What do you think is, like, how do you think that experience led to where you are now? Because you mentioned earlier, like, you felt this need to come back to Manila to fulfill this dream job of being on radio. Was it ever a consideration at that time to just stay in Australia and try to do it there?
Very much. Very much. Yes. Short answer is yes. I was very happy in Australia already. I settled. I was married there, like I said. And by the time we left, I already started for the first time my own little business. So it was small, but it was mine, and it was, that's the great Australian dream. Have a little business, have a little quarter-acre block, and a golden retriever and a station wagon, and that's what we all aspired to. But I guess when my mom and my brothers moved back, and so I was the last one left of my nuclear family there. I had uncles and aunts, of course, but my main family had gone back. I just remember that crossroad there, 25 years old at the time I was like, I've always felt that you're not going to be regretful for the things you've done, but the things you haven't, right? That's a common saying in life, and I subscribe to that. So when this opportunity came, where my mom and brothers were already moving here, or moved here, and they said, why don't you try it out? I mean, you never know, right? This is your home, and you do have something to offer that's a little unique and all that. So it was that itch that I thought, if I don't do it now, when? So I spoke to my wife about it. I said, do you want to try? We don't have kids yet. Let's bite the bullet. Anyway, if it doesn't work out, a year or so, we come back. But that's basically what led me there, was just to just follow a dream, scratch an itch. Because I don't think it can end badly if you, I think it only end worse if you don't do that. If you have a calling or an itch or something you need to scratch, do it, because it'll just turn into resentment. And the what could have beens are the worst kind of resentments and regrets to have. Because it'll always eat you up. You'll never know.
Correct.
So life is all about experiences, and each experience teaches you something. When you deny yourself of the experience out of fear and whatever, get prepared to sleepwalk through life. You'll end up, safe but comatose. Yeah, nothing can happen to you, but you're not going to experience much either.
Yeah, you're dead before you even really die. Yeah,
exactly. So that did help, because I think I didn't have anything that really tied me down to the country. I didn't own a home yet. I owned a business, but it was, like I said, car detailing. So it wasn't exactly, a family business of 80 years or 100 years that you're leaving behind. It was at that perfect point that I thought, it's now or never. And so I did it. And it turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life for the first 2 years.
Because of the radio job,
I tell you, first 2 years, biggest mistake. I was like, what am I doing here? I was this close to leaving, but I remember going, if I leave now, I will have to say that I lost. That's it. I remember that feeling going, if you leave now, because at that time that I was thinking that I was evicted from a house already, I literally did not know where I was going to live when I was in that exact moment when I was thinking, do I call my in-laws up and ask them for help, because they were my last resort, because my family was just in no position to help at the time. Everyone had hit rock bottom and their own way. It's just a perfect storm, I mean, like, my mom's business went bankrupt. My brother had a really bad, unforeseen drama where he worked. He could not have written a script for it. And all of a sudden, we all found ourselves, and we were all living together in his house, in his apartment. So when he lost his job suddenly, on top of the time when my mom was bankrupt and I was earning $10,000, $8,000 a month, you can imagine it was this perfect crumbling. And I remember thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this? And the only way out was to literally make that phone call to Australia and tell my in-laws, and I think any man can relate to this, and just say, you were right and I was wrong, and she was better off with you than she was with me. Can you imagine saying that as a man? I mean, and I had a kid already. But that was the reality, and that's the painful reality of it. Is you can sugarcoat it all you want, but you only have one job as a father, and you can't seem to do that.
So during that time, like, how did you overcome that, or how did you resist the urge to sort of just give up, pack it in, move back to Australia?
We came so damn close that time. That time was. That time I can tell you the exact story of how it changed, but had that not happened, that story I'm about to tell you, I don't know. I think I know I was ready to just make that phone call within that day for sure. Because I was sitting outside the radio station booth, staring at the car park from the third floor. And I must have had this gaze that was just like lost. Like, I didn't even notice. My boss walked in and she walked behind me and she said, "Hi, hello, how are you?" And she's all bubbly and, and I didn't let on, by the way. Nobody knew what my dilemma was. I was just pretending to be, oh no, I'm cool. And so she goes, "What are you thinking about? My God, ang layo your thoughts. My God, And I was playing it down. I said, "Oh, I'm house hunting." "Oh my God, that's so exciting. House hunting, I love house hunting." I was like, "It's not the kind of house hunting you're thinking of, dude." And she was like, "Oh my God, my sister has an apartment in Greenbelt. Oh, you should get it. It's so bagay for you." And I was like, I almost said, you know how much you pay me?
What you're
You
paying
do.
me?
You signed a check, right? You know how much you pay me, right? You know, I'm not going to afford even her parking spot there. So what are we talking about? Now, I've told this story before a few times, and up to this day, I'll never know what happened there, if my boss knew or not, okay? But what she did there was nothing short of a miracle. Because whether she actively knew I was going through and just created this thing, or she was completely naive and just it happened to be a miracle, either way, I'm grateful, because she said to me, look, here's the deal, right? If you're looking for a place, my sister is going to rent her place, but she can't rent her place for 6 weeks because she wants to renovate it, right? So she wants to go to Boracay for 6 weeks and take a holiday there. What I'm saying is, if you take over her shift, right? You're 6 to 9 a.m., she's 9 to 12. If you take over her 9 to 12 shift, it will act as rent for the apartment. And it was a very fair rent, because it was, I'm sure she probably got paid maybe 25 grand for that shift. She was the owner. So she probably got paid 25 for that shift. And that apartment at that time was probably worth 20 or 20, yeah, about 20. It was a studio. So fair, no handouts, nothing overdone. No. It was more like, would you do it? And I said, that's an absolutely perfect deal. I keep my pride, dignity, I'll work for it. She gets what she wants because she can't do anything with it anyway. Plus she gets her 6-week holiday in Boracay. I said, deal, I'll do it. And I did it, and that was the turning point for everything, because from there, I literally got pulled out of that hole, and the trauma of going back to that same spot and being homeless and having my kid not know where my kid's going to stay, I vowed to myself, never, ever again will I ever put myself in this situation. So I moved into that apartment like the next day. It was semi-furnished. I mean, really small. I'm talking, it may have sounded flash, greenbelt and all that, but it was, I think, 18 square meters. And yung joke natin is, I used to have to step outside just to change my mind. That's how small the place was. And so but I stayed there for 6 weeks, and in those 6 weeks, I asked my boss, listen, I need to earn a little extra money. Maybe I can do a few more things around the place. So I end up 6 to 9 a.m. was my shift. 9 to 12 was her sister. So I did the 6 to 12. 6 hours on live radio. 12 o'clock, I would move to the sales department, and I would sell advertisements for radio, 30-seconders. So I would go to the agencies with my books and my PowerPoints and my whatever. I used to have a movie screen I used to bring with a projector and explain the demographics and the reach and all that crap. And then they would go, all right, so yeah, we'll buy. And then at night, so I'd get home, I'd get back there at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And from 6 or 7 o'clock at night, I would work the whole night as production manager. So I would sell them the 30-second ad. I would make the 30-second ad. I would voice the 30-second ad. I'd be the voice talent. And the next morning, I would air the 30-second ad. I was SM, man. I had it all. Yeah. I did it all. But it really, I just went on this thing for mga 6 weeks. All I did was I hardly slept. I just did this from 6 a.m. to like midnight every day. And in that short time, 6 weeks, when the apartment was up and the deal was over, she went to take over apartment. I moved out like promised, We agreed 6 weeks. She took it back. I got a 3-bedroom house in Merville. I was able to put money down there. I was able to put 100-something thousand in the bank. It was a pretty good 6 weeks. Because I was just, it shows that when you are focused, the universe conspires with you. Energy is just looking for a place to channel
to flow,
through.
Yeah.
It really is.
Nice.
But you need to commit.
Nice. That's a very nice story. Do you ever experience self-doubt?
Oh God, yeah.
Until now, like
yeah. You know what?
In what way, and how do you deal with it?
I recently started reading up a bit about this because I thought, like everyone else, that when you read up on it, you realize everyone else not only feels this way, but think they're the only one who feels this way. They call it the imposter syndrome. Yeah. And for years I thought, because you ignore it there. I think it's in human nature to, no, you just, why are you going to entertain that? It's a negative thought, and you're like, but it keeps recurring. And then you realize, yung pala, that we're all on a journey, and all of us have to do something for the first time. All of us. You're doing something for the first time now, I guarantee you. Maybe not this podcast, but there's something you're doing for the first time today. All of us in this room are doing something for the first time today. So at any point in our life, we're going to be an imposter. At any point. So there's nothing to say that really, at the end of the day, that I will go through this experience going, okay, I know transport. I've invested a lot of my time and expertise in transport and understanding how things work. But still, there are times I think, why is this, what makes me more than this guy? What makes me more than that guy? But this was the same when I was writing for cars. And I could have also worked with the same level of self-doubt going, I don't know how to know as much about this car, about this guy. This guy really knows, he's like hundreds of years ahead of me in terms of knowledge. I'll never catch up. But then you find your unique selling angle, which was, I can tell the story better, or I can relate it to the person. I can isolate a feeling. I can recreate it. I can articulate it. That's something that I do better. So that's, every time I feel and experience self-doubt, I realize, what is it that that's why I was really appreciative of that question you asked. What do you think you do better than most people? And that's what I really do feel that I do better. So I go back to that and I say, look, there's another thing that I also cling to. Somebody's got to do it.
Might as well be you.
It may as well be me, because you know what? If it's true and you really are an imposter, don't you think they're going to hand it to just another imposter? If you step off the plate, as they say, they're going to replace you with another imposter, because we're all, in a way, just imposters. Everyone, there's some degree of faking it till you make it. There's some degree of that. And I think anyone that tells you, no, I was born for this, I'm qualified for this, and I'm the best at this, is lying.
Yeah, or
they're lying.
They're arrogant.
They're arrogant, they're lying, and I wouldn't want to be them, put it that way. I always believe that, it's you need to keep that level of humility too, and it keeps you honest, it keeps you grounded, because as much as I look around now and I think I could look at my achievements and go, well, I've done this well, I've done this well, or I'm in this place now. I also tell myself, be honest with yourself. At the end of the day, to thine own self be true. When you are alone with your thoughts, you don't have to tell anybody else's. Tell yourself. There are people out there that work twice as hard as you and have half as much. Why is that? So there is no formula, really. When you say entitlement, nobody's really entitled to it. There are people out there, and I'm just talking in my immediate circle, that I could pick and go, this guy's working twice as hard as me but got half as much. Because maybe the convergence of everything has not come for that person at the time. Everything has to come together at a certain time. That person's time maybe hasn't come yet. Maybe that person's time may never come. I don't know. That's his destiny and her destiny. But that's just in my immediate circle. Can you imagine when you go worldwide, how many other people are working harder than you and have nothing in comparison to what you have because they were born in a different country or under a different nationality or have a different look or have a big wart on their nose or something? I don't know. Does that make them any better or worse than you? And these things keep you really grounded because it makes you understand, look, always be grateful. You may be good and you may have worked for it, but don't think that just that alone is going to get you there. Because like I said, I've met people who work harder than me and have less. And it's a very humbling experience when that happens.
When you said earlier that, I like how you put it in terms of, if you feel like you're an imposter and you don't think you're up for the job, they're going to give it to somebody else anyway.
And that person's probably
might as well be you. Yeah. What would you advise to somebody who would say to that, yeah, maybe they should get get somebody else to do it?
If the feeling is that strong, then yeah, maybe you want to do something else, because that's already there's a healthy level of imposter syndrome that I think everyone has. Mm-hmm. But if it starts crossing over like any other feeling and it's becoming an unhealthy feeling where your self-doubt is so much that you can't really do your job, then yes, maybe it's time to step off the plate and give somebody else a chance. Or you could embrace it and say, well, everyone had to do something for the first time before.
Yeah, everyone starts
Everyone has
as
to do
an
it at some
amateur.
point. Yeah. So, can I learn this? Now, I just look around and I go, I've always considered myself a little bit more, I'm never the worst person in the room, or at least that's when I look around. I'm never the worst person in the room. So that means to say I can probably, there are people out there who could do a lot worse jobs than I could do.
So at worst, I'll do a half decent job. At worst.
Yes, but I think to directly answer your question, if I felt that it had crossed over to a slightly unhealthy feeling of imposter, then I'd leave, because that's already that's already pride in your work and self-satisfaction. If you can't feel that pride in your work, if you feel you're doing a lousy job, I don't want to be doing that job. That I feel very strongly about that. But whether I feel that, oh my God, why are they choosing me to advertise a top bank, like RCBC or something? I'm like, with all the choices they have, it's like, well, that's right. With all the choices they have, they chose you. I mean, that's their choice. Just be happy for it, and just keep doing what you're doing. And sometimes you can even ask Erica, because I drive her insane sometimes. They're going, you never know when this is going to end, because you do always feel that it's going to end. You feel, especially when you've come from nothing. And I was just watching this Kevin Hart thing on Netflix.
On Netflix. Oh, I love that.
And he speaks about the same thing, and he goes, when's it going to end?
Yeah.
Right? Because he grew up broke as well. And it's like, when are they going to catch on that I don't deserve this? So we're all feeling a level of that.
What do you think is what do you think is lacking overall in our country in terms of well, you obviously deal with a lot of the transportation issues, diba? If you can boil it down to one thing, or like the root cause of all our issues with traffic and transportation, what do you think?
I'd hate to bring it down to one thing, because I'm a very strong advocate of it being a combination of it. But I also want to answer your question as best as I can, because I don't believe it's one thing. But if you're going to pin me to that and say just pick one thing, I think it's a lack of planning, forward thinking and planning, because you're always going to be playing catch up, and that's just, you can't, not with a city the size of Metro Manila or a country the size of the Philippines. But when you're talking about anywhere from 15 to 20 million in the city of Greater Metro Manila, which is what our daytime population is, if you haven't thought of these solutions 20, 50 years ago, we're always going to be chasing our tail.
How many years do you think we're like behind?
I can tell you almost to the letter. We're about 1927 is where we are, where the Japanese were when they made the decision.
1927?
Yeah. Because the Japanese were telling me just late last year, when I flew there for this program, that there was this really nice one-on-one program. They flew me over to Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they discussed how they work their transport and stuff. I spent a week with them, and they were telling me about what made them build their subway and why. And in 1927, they were explaining the whole thing, and I was going, oh my God, this is 2019 for us. The way you're describing your situation, it's the way we're talking right now.
Wow.
So that's how far ahead they are and how far behind we are. So they already envisioned this traffic, the economic backbone that they needed to create. They created that, and in '64 they created the Shinkansen in line with the Olympics. Then they're always ahead of the game. China, their medium-term plans, short-term is like 50 years. Then medium-term is like 100 years, and then after that, long-term. They are so far ahead of the game. So that would, if I was going to pin one, but it's really a whole number of things. If you just give, because say if you fix that and you gave them the planning, but you didn't fix anything else, and you just said, all right, that's the one thing. I've always felt that without discipline and respect, you're just giving them a bigger playground to piss all over. So build more roads, and then you're just going to get more kamotes. You got to solve the kamote issue at the LTO level. And that LTO level has got to be from the time they're kids. So it will take a generation for us to wipe this out, if we're lucky. Because you need to re-establish the value of driving as a profession. We have got to rewire the way we look at that. Because at the moment, it is the lowest paying job. It is, how do you expect to get professionalism out of it for $500 a day? You cannot. And they say, and because it's been done this way for so long, it's a protected job. You call it now anti-poor. Anything you want to do with it is anti-poor. I don't get that, because I understand where they're coming from. Let's say if we were to say, okay, driver's licenses now are 10,000 pesos. And you had to go through 3 months of training, and then you had to sit in international tests, and we made all these restrictions. You guaranteed the first thing that's going to happen is the groups are going to come out anti-poor. And to a certain degree, they'll have a point, because all these professions surrounding it that you're now going to wipe them out. But in theory, you could say exactly the same thing about a pilot. That's anti-poor. Look how much you have to spend to become a pilot, and how much study. But because we've always done it, we just accept it. Because there's no way you're going to jump in a plane with some kamote behind in the cockpit.
Sure.
But
we do it every day.
But that's because somebody then dictated the standard of that profession and saying, we're not going to allow kamote here. He needs to go through XYZ of training. But we skipped it with the driving, because if you go to England, that lorry driver has the same respect and qualification as a pilot. And the truck drivers, the same thing. And the articulated trucks, even higher. So they give you value to that profession. They dictate the value of it. So therefore now, when you see professional drivers out on the road, they're professional drivers. And then you have created this standard, which is a lot higher. Here, we just sort of said, anyone can do that. Oh, ikaw, Mang Doming, ano mo yan? No. Then that needs to be engineered out. And so even if you had the infra, but you had that level of training and thinking, you're not going to get very far. That's why I feel very strongly about it. It's many things. The education, the training, the enforcement, the infrastructure, and then, of course, the big elephant in the room is the mass rapid transit system. You cannot have a system or a city without a size of Metro Manila without one. And if you don't, you'll end up exactly in the same situation we're in now. And you also need to develop a decentralization program. These things are not negotiable. And this is what frustrates me about traffic, is that I don't like to sound like I'm oversimplifying it. Because people say, if it's so easy, it's not easy, but it's not rocket science either. Because it'll take effort, but at least we know the ways to do it. They're tried and proven formulas that around the world, and you cannot cheat your way around it. Tell me one mega city around the world where you have 12 to 15 million people in a landmass the size of Metro Manila, where they don't have a working mass rapid transit system and they're doing okay. It doesn't. So what makes us think we're special, that we'll be the only country that can get away with it? Or we won't spend on that, but we'll somehow, through the Bayanihan spirit or because of whatever. No, sorry. There are certain ways. If that was the case, if it was just a case of the Bayanihan spirit or whatever you wanted to say, nobody would be spending so much on infra. They do for a reason.
Do you ever feel like advocating for this is like an uphill battle, so almost like an unwinnable battle for you?
I do. You had some great questions, by the way, because I do. But I also always answer that question with, what would happen if I wasn't doing it then? I mean, if I'm frustrated and I feel that nothing's happening, you don't know what's going to happen if you're not there. That's what keeps me going. Because every time you get small victories, they're fine. I love those small victories. You put them there. We get a little law here. We get a little something passed there. You get a stay of execution on ride sharing for a little while for the motorcycles or whatever. These are little micro, and it just shows that, look, we're here, We're here. Don't screw with us too much, okay? Because there's pushback now. Before, I didn't feel that the private sector, and when I say private sector, I don't I don't like to say I represent the private cars. I like to represent the road users. So whether you are in a jeep, a bus, on a pedestrian crossing, tricycle or a car or whatever, I feel that I would like to represent your voice as much as I can. I want the government to know that there's pushback now, because before there was no pushback. Jeepneys, trucks, buses, all those had lots. Toda, Fejodaps, Piston. Oh my God, you do something and you're going to get all of them on your tail. Yeah. You wake up the next morning with every AM radio broadcaster calling you, anong sabi ni mo? Anong sabi nila? Whereas the private car, that's why they pick on us. Yeah. So every time a government, I can picture this happening. They're always like, oh, anong gagawin natin? Medyo matrapik yung EDSA, ganyan, sige. Bawal yung mga bus na ganyan. Ay, sir, wag yan. Kasi yeah. Sige. Yung mga jeep na lang, ay, hindi, sir, wag. Mas grabe pa yun. Okay, sige. Sige, coding na lang. Si James Deakin lang yung mag-iingay dyan. So that's how I feel sometimes. But now it's getting stronger and stronger. So as a group, the pushback is a bit, okay, hey, we're not anymore a voiceless society, okay? We have our say, and that's why I'm really trying to be as responsible as I can, because I do not want to end up like, I know a lot of groups out there start off perhaps with a good motive, and then later on end up to be worse than the people they are criticizing, because they're not really, there's some times where they won't take care of the interests of their group. They'll just take care of their own interests. It's like, hey, I hold this lobby, I hold this voice, this group, and we negotiate in the back table, and we just, I don't like that. So that's why I'm very careful about how that voice comes out. It has to be balanced.
I'm sure you get asked this a lot. Do you ever, would you consider going into public office?
I get asked a lot, and I have the same answer all the time. No, I don't. I don't, and the reason I don't is if I felt, and I mean this, if I felt in my heart that I could do a better job there, then yeah, I think I could make a sacrifice if needed. But I don't believe that in my heart. I really don't think that, one, I don't feel that I could do a better job within politics because of my personality and my, it's a dirty game. It takes a special breed of person. And number two is that also, we're not exactly voiceless and useless out here. We've actually done and achieved more as a group and a community than many of the senators and congressmen in there. We've had laws started and passed from nothing. Like the speed limiter law was a petition. And it turned from a change.org petition, few social media campaigns later, picked up by a senator, Senator JV, brought it upper lower house, bicameral, boom, law, became a Republic Act. It's something I'm very proud of. It's something that sadly is not being enforced yet. The IRR hasn't been established yet. Which is sad, but you know what? Don't lose all hope, because it's still a Republic Act. So anyone that now wants to enact that law, it just says, okay, we just put an IRR with it and we can start doing it tomorrow. So I feel that we're not exactly powerless or voiceless or useless. And then also, if the reason people ask me that, and I'm very flattered that they do, but if the reason they're asking is because they trust me and they say, well, we want you to represent and all that. Okay, thank you. I take that very seriously. But don't you think you need somebody also with that same level of trust in media? So you'll have to replace me with somebody of equal, somebody you trust just the same way. Because somebody's got to shine the light in those bastards. And who do you trust to do that? So let's not, I would rather stay here. I cannot see a future where I would ever want to get into politics, because I've seen how it works, and I think I can play the game a lot better from outside, because I can play dumb. When I say play dumb, I'm not beholden to anybody except who I feel I'm representing in voices. That's it. So you play a little bit of politics. You're not calling people out and calling them names, but it's different when you're there. But you got elected because this party helped you. Now you're like, okay, I think we should remove all the buses of the. Ay, wag yan kasi si Sir, siya may ay ng ano. Ay, hindi pala pwede yan. Okay, now you're trying to make the sinigang without sampalok. Yeah. How do you do that? Oh, well, then we'll make a nice sinigang without the sampalok. No, you need the sampalok. In this case, you need to remove the bus for this to work. But now you're going to try to find a way how to create the same recipe without that, because of politics. That's what I can't deal with. That's what I can't sleep at night with. That's just one of many, many, many different reasons, but I've seen how it works there, and it gets very... so, you know what? On this side, I can always just... I'm not beholden. I can pretend that whatever. And how I like to do my style is I try not to harass the politicians or embarrass them. I try to give them opportunities to shine. I find that I've gotten more out, doing a lot better doing it that way. Here, gift wrap. Would you like this? Look at this. And look how many people are supporting this. It just needs maybe a little push from you, good sir. And they're like, oh, no. And it works. I mean, and hey, look, if it works, it's no harm done. That's we've all won out something out of it, no?
I think that's exactly the sentiment that I shared earlier at the start of the show about, I think people really trust you, that you have good intentions, and that you're not, sort of in this for like an ulterior motive. And I think it just goes to show that we need, I think what you said about staying in this lane is also important, because I think you'll be able to inspire other people also to sort of do what you're doing, maybe in different sectors, because it's not just transportation that we have an issue with. It's like pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So, and I think going back to what you said, there's this quote that really resonates with me when I think about like the problems of the country, and when you said earlier that if you can boil it down to one thing, it's like forward thinking. There's this quote that says like, a society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. Beautiful. And I think that just, when you said 1927 earlier, that's almost 100 years that we're like behind. So that's, I mean, it's hard. I think it's hard for people to not feel the despair of the situation, especially like our countrymen who go through traffic and having to line up in the streets of EDSA to get to the MRT, which is not even like a decent train. So I think that's really a big challenge, and it's good to have people like you, sort of pushing. Right.
Well, thank you. I mean, the word used was quite begot despair. It's true, but when you've come from despair, you relate, and there's empathy there. So maybe that's part of what's coming across, because I know what it's like to feel despair, but I also, like I told you before, never lost hope, because it's the only thing I had to cling on to. So I cling to the same hope for the Philippines, because there is hope. It's tough, but there's hope. And then like to this morning, I was with Secretary Villar. We met super early for breakfast. We went to the BGC bridge there, and here's a guy that's been working really, really, really hard, and in a firing line. I mean, like, so you meet good people. I've been watching this guy for a while, and he gets bashed a lot because he's front lines. DPWH is right there but he's been quietly doing these programs. Like, he's been quiet because when you talk, especially your first 3 years, and in this industry, roads, now it's going to take 3 years before anything happens. So in your first 3 years, you're just getting nothing but hate. So he had to just ride through that 3 years. And it was really only today when I started seeing this. We're crossing a hump with him and his space. And I really felt it, because I was like, I've been going to these road openings and speaking with him for a while. And he's always bubbly and always, he's in front of the press, so he's going to be doing his bit and all that. But today I felt something different. I felt like he was like a re-energized guy, because we had crossed a hump, which is, it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's still not going to be solved, but every improvement, every road opening now will have an incremental improvement up until siguro 2022, because he put down 23 different decongestion plans for EDSA that he didn't really share with anyone, because he didn't want the whole sit there and justify everything and it's not going to work and all that. And what if only 21 worked and not the 23? And then he's got to, and now that most of it's already started and it's already into kind of semi-autopilot mode, 9 bridges, I didn't even know that, 9 bridges along Pasig River are going to be opened by 2022 supposedly. NLEX, SLEX connector. There's going to be some new radial roads and stuff, plus other roads leading out from even from the T-Plex, etc. All of this is with a master plan. Now, it can't be compared to the master plan of Japan, but at least somebody's thinking about this. Let's bring it out of Metro Manila. Let's just bring it out. So I'm seeing hope there. So that renewed hope, it gives me hope, and I like to pass on that hope. Because if we don't have hope, we've got nothing. So I just finished writing an article before you arrived, and it was about that. It was about, I didn't realize that I had already pretty much borderline almost giving up hope too. But then I see this, and now I've got something to cling to. And let's rally behind. Let's just get this going, because all you need to do is get a few breakthroughs, and then you'll feel the tipping point. The problem is we're far from the tipping point then. We need more people to just do that. And if we could just inspire, and like you said about the shade and the tree, and saying, if you don't know who you're inspiring out there, and that's my version of the shade that I don't know is growing out there, because every time I'm online and we're talking about some pretty, heavy topics, right? This is a good example. Sometimes you get a very argumentative or belligerent, or sometimes a kamote that's arguing with you, right? And I'll make sagot. But my style is, I never fight with my people online. I think that's just so pointless. I will do my best to explain it as patiently and as well as possible. And after a while, really, I'll just disengage, or, I will never get down to name calling and all that. It's just not my style. But when I'm engaging with somebody who's like really not getting it, and you can already get the people underneath going, "Sir, wag na.
Yeah.
You're wasting your time with this one," they would say. And on the surface they're right. You're like, yeah, it's pointless. But I'm not talking to this guy.
Yeah.
I'm talking to the hundreds, if not thousands, around this conversation that we don't see. That's the shade that we don't see, right? Those are the people who are listening and see how you handle this. Not that one guy. He just happens to be the trigger point for the conversation. Invest in those people you don't see, because that's the impact you have no idea. Now, I've been doing this for 20 years, but probably the real social side and all that, maybe a good strong 5 or 6 years, maybe. That's not yet enough time to see it bear real fruit. You'll see that in 10, 15 years. Because who knows that you haven't inspired somebody who was like finishing school and stuff like that. And then in 10 years' time is now in a position to do something. He or she is the new generation, the new breed, who was brought up with this new, you don't know.
Yep.
This is why I take this so seriously. It's a lot. I mean, it's the corniest saying, and it's the most cliched about great power, great responsibility, but it's true. Because in this one, you don't know the effect. And the effect you have on others is the greatest currency you have. So you have got to be very careful how you spend that.
Nice. To balance the serious side, as what you're saying, on your social media, you also do a lot of giveaways. And I know a lot of my friends who are always who are always there. Like when I see your post, and I look at all the comments, like all my friends, I'm like, oh, so na naman si ano,
yeah, a lot of people say
with the hand raise emoji. Like how did that start? Like what inspired you to get started with that giveaway?
Okay, that was about 2015 or 16 maybe, and I remember it being a dash cam. I was doing a lot of reviews on dash cams because that was my advocacy at the time. I wanted every car in at least Metro Manila or nationwide, sana, to be fitted with a mandatory dash cam, because I felt that, I still feel that's strongly about it. It's a very small thing to do that will have great impact later on. The he said, she said with insurance, so we don't have to stop our cars on the side of the road and block traffic. It's all recorded. And then eventually lead up to this system where you can actually submit it to a government agency when somebody's counterflowing, wangs, and then they can use it for law enforcement. So when I started, a lot of people started sending me dash cams, can you review our dash cam? And because it's an advocacy, there was no way in the world I would charge for that because advocacy nga eh. So I'm very, very careful about that. If it's an advocacy and some, I won't charge. Like I won't take an endorsement from a dashcam company because then conflict of interest. So I ended up with a bunch of dash cams, right? And they're like, they want you to just try this and review it, and then they're not asking for it back, and I'm not going to sell it on Carousel or something like that, right? That's super badui. So why not give it away? So that's the first time I thought of, let's review it and then give it away. So I reviewed it, gave it away, and then it was very successful. So I reviewed another one, gave it away, and eventually I just started seeing this model, right? And I was like, this works well, because if you balance it well, you can really, I mean, it's a win-win-win. But there's balance, because it's not just, you can't just go in and just say, oh, okay, let's just raffle everything, because you'll end up with a problem. In this case, it's like we're still selective. We probably turn down, for every one raffle, we probably turn down 10, 15, maybe even more some weeks, because we're fussy about what we put out. We're fussy about what we also don't want it to become known for just raffles.
Yeah.
And it just took on its whole new life. I mean, people were getting something for nothing, and that's how I keep it. You know this, I'll never ask you to like, share. I'll just put your hand up.
Like tag 5.
No. And in fact, once you start doing that, you should already get a DTI permit. And that's not something I want to, I don't want to get into that. And so I asked DTI, what do we need to do about this? And they was like, well, so long as you're not selling anything, there's no purchase necessary, and you're not a brand that's, you're fine. You're just giving it away? I said, yeah. They're like, why? I just want to make people happy. It's a combination of wanting to make people happy. Everyone's happy. Brands are happy. People who win it are happy. We're happy. Nobody loses there. So we just keep it contained once or twice. Twice a week is already a big week. This is a big week because it's Valentine's. So we've had about 3 or 4, but normally it's 1 a week. And just keep it light, keep it happy.
Yeah.
People, and on a very personal note, I know this might sound corny, but there's something so wonderful about meeting a raffle winner, because the joy is so pure. I never get tired of it, because you meet them and they're like, it's always the same. I can't believe I won, especially if it's a big one like a smartphone. We've given away smartphones, 65-inch TVs, stuff like that. Imagine, you're like, talk about imposter syndrome and not feeling worthy. I meet them all the time because they're like, are you sure you're not there's not gonna be a wow mali or something jump out? You should have seen your face. You thought we were gonna give you a TV. My God. Yeah, no. And so, you see them walking out. Sometimes they're even looking back
like sure, guys.
Yeah, are you sure that security's not gonna stop us at the gate? No, it's yours. See you. And then I've had great stories of people who write back, and I remember one story, the girl who won the Note 9. She was going through some real problems and stuff. She won it. Everyone's shocked. There's nobody I met that went, yeah, I was expecting to win that. No, never. There was like, what? We're talking sometimes 50, 60,000 comments. And then you win?
Yeah.
And the girl won the Note 9. She wrote back and she said, months and months later, that she was able to start like a teaching thing online, and she created a little business around that phone. And now she's supporting her kid over it. How can you not feel buo with that?
Yeah.
It's always about, I realized early, and I'm glad I realized early, because it's just reinforced every time something happens. Like you see Kobe Bryant when he passed away. It will always come down to the effect that you have on others. That's really the only thing you leave behind.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he left on some houses and stuff for sure, but eventually, I didn't get any of those houses, and I have a great memory of him. I didn't even watch basketball. So it's that effect. That's literally the only thing that we have. Everything else will pass. I won't remember what you said or did. I'll always remember how you made me feel. I'll always just, and then you don't know nga. I keep going back to how the effect that you have, I don't know. So always be wary of it, because you might be sending out these ambassadors or warriors, whatever you want to call them, if you inspire them and they go out there and they inspire one or two more people and two more people, you can see how exponentially one life can make a big difference. And if I never see the effects of that, that's totally cool.
Yep.
Because I've lived a life that was very fulfilling for me. I wasn't doing it with the promise of being repaid. The process is already payment as it is. I feel fulfilled. I feel complete. And I think that's everyone wants to feel that. So there's almost in a way a selfishness behind it.
What's the weirdest thing that anyone has approached you to raffle off?
Jingle bags, adult diapers.
What?
And we did raffle off the jingle bags. It was actually a pretty successful one too.
That's actually useful. I mean, when you're stuck in traffic.
What else? There were some. What? Huh? Bibs, and we haven't even. Yeah, baby's bibs with my name on it. Yeah, that was the weirdest. I was like, I don't know how my wife's gonna feel about this. Why you got your name on other people's babies' bibs, huh?
Wait, they already had it made?
Yeah, printed now. It's here somewhere.
What?
Or upstairs. Yeah. I was like, look, this is a very defined niche market right here. But
Is it because you're the ultimate tito of Manila?
I don't know. What else has been weird? Some odd medical things, Yeah, but funnily enough, the one I thought weird that really took off was the jingle bags. And I hate to say, I keep them in my car, and I've used some of them. I hate to say it, but yeah, it's especially the van. It's got curtains and everything, so you're just like, I have them up there, and then
Okay. Well, actually, I have a lot of questions, but I want to be respectful of your time. So
no, it's okay.
We'll head towards the last part of the show. There's always 2 questions that I like to ask all my guests. It's related to legacy. I think you've touched on some of it during the interview, but the 2 questions are: so the first question is, knowing everything that you know now, right? Everything that you know at this moment, everything you've experienced in the past years, all the successes, the highs, the lows. If you were given a chance to go back to that point, let's say that rock bottom feeling back when you were evicted, right? And you got a chance to go back in time to that.
I don't want to go back.
Exact moment. No, but knowing what you know now, right? And you had, let's say, a minute to talk to James from that time. Maybe instead of your boss passing by, it was you. And you had a minute to talk to James. What would you say?
Sucks to be you. No, that's I'm gonna have to think about this, because the superficial and easy answer is hang in there, it'll all work out. It's a very generic response that would actually be okay. It would actually be, because that's how it would have happened. It would have worked out. But once again, what did that process do to me? What did it teach me? What kind of value did it leave behind? I don't know. I don't know if I would be the same person today without that. Would I have gotten the same hunger? Would I have gotten slightly off to a different direction? I really don't know, because that was such a defining moment. So knowing what I know now, the simple answer to that would be just trust in yourself and in the process. Just trust in it. Because knowing what I know now, it did work out. But I probably would have punched my new self in the nose if he said that to me. So I probably wouldn't have, my old self probably wouldn't have taken it well from my new self, because it was just, you're really at a desperate point. I don't think that would have made me feel any better till years later, and I wouldn't have needed it then. So it's really hard. It's really hard, because now that I have kids, and kids, some of them approaching that age, so one's 20, so I was 25 or 26 then, 26 maybe. I often think about him and all those kids and think, what do I want to do to protect them from this? And do I really want to protect them from this? And it bothers me a lot, because I'm like, I don't really know, because I remember we had a podcast in this room, and I was talking to Brandon Berry, who was sitting right there, and my son was sitting right there. And I asked Brandon, the guy, what would you do? I mean, because this is a genuine worry I have. And he goes, well, because there's one school of thought is like, don't give them, no, I didn't get it from my mom or my dad, so why should I give it to him? And if he wants to end up like me, he should also have a hard life. But you can't also say that, because they're two different circumstances. My mom didn't give me money because she thought I would learn from it. It's because she didn't have any. That's a different situation to saying, well, okay, I've got this nice place, I've got the car, but I'm not going to give it to you because, you should suffer like me. That's a difference. You can't compare. So I don't know. I just feel that people need to go through their own journey, because at the end of the day, it's your story, and nothing has shaped humanity any greater than stories. Stories is what just shaped humanity. I mean, that's a whole new, that's been proven over and over again. It's literally stories are what shape humanity. So each one has their own story. And if I give you and gift wrap your story, well, guess what? It's not your story anymore. Yep. It's mine. So live it. And if it's a tragic tale, it's a tragic tale. I can't really, I mean, we'll find that out probably in the afterlife, I guess. But I know enough about life to know that, you got to go through it yourself. And
okay. Speaking of stories, the second question is, what else are you looking to accomplish? Like, what are you looking to write in your story over the next 10 years? So you mentioned politics is out.
Yeah, I'd rather definitely no politics. My life has been full of surprises. So I didn't picture myself in any of the spots that I've been in, because I never had a plan, because I never had the structure for it. So I'm actually hoping that it's another surprise, like something I could have never foreseen, something I could have never, I don't know, maybe even a movie career, or something that, you wouldn't dream of, right? Or hosting, international events like Miss Universe or something like that. That would be a
Fast and the Furious cameo. Let's call it
a Fast and the Furious cameo.
Let's
I mean,
do
dude, that would be wow, right? But I've learned enough to just go that the best things are really it's the element of surprise. It's just, and that's how my life was pretty much panned out. If you were to ask me anytime, you'd be paid to drive Ferraris and Lamborghinis in exotic locations, you'd be like, what? And then you'd be here, you'd be doing this ad and that ad, whatever. No, I could never foresee it. But it's through the little deeds that you do, the little ways that and then you create the opportunities for yourself. I don't know where those opportunities will go now. I would like to see it in something like, I would love scratching the itch of, let's say, something on movies or a good TV show that's regional, like something there where you could showcase the Filipino, I wouldn't say culture, there's enough shows doing culture, but let's say in my area it would probably be a regional show about driving, where you're showing like different dream destinations where you're driving, but it's regional, not just can't be, and you show the Philippines, of course, but you're airing this all around Australasia and stuff like that. It's a well-produced type of, you're showing the beautiful spots we have, but by a car, because I love to drive, and then you go and something like that would be great. But I'm also very open to any surprises.
I think the Fast and the Furious role will come in. They're gonna come here. They need to find a nice car. They have to talk to you.
That'd be awesome.
So you hook them up.
That would be awesome.
Okay, before I ask the final question, where can people follow you? Where can people follow your work?
Facebook's probably my most active. And the reason it's my most active is because for what I do, it tends to be the best platform for it, because it's very engaging and long form. But Instagram, I try to keep up with good presence there. Try to do a daily or every other day presence there. But Facebook, you can't miss me. I'm there 3, 4, 5 times a day, and I try to keep it. I try to keep it with substance. Post with substance. Not, of course, you're going to get the memes and the Tito jokes every now and again, but the vast majority is going to be, okay, you're going to learn something, or you might win something. Yep. Either way, it's pretty good reason to stay and follow the page.
Yep. So before I ask the final question, I just wanted to acknowledge you again, James. You've been an inspiration to me. I've followed you for a few years also. I've tried a couple of times to win your giveaways, but like what you said earlier, like we've been talking about, like, sort of building a shade that you not even know who's gonna benefit from it. That's also one of the main reasons why I started this podcast, to talk to my fellow entrepreneurs, fellow brand builders, to be able to share their stories in the hopes of inspiring someone. And one of the main sort of advocacies that I have as an entrepreneur is to create Filipino brands. It's an uphill battle to create a Filipino brand and try to bring it to other countries. But I, like what you said earlier, if somebody has to do it, might as well be me. And I feel like sometimes in that journey of creating something, and you're trying to enter another market, it's very hard, and sometimes even your own local government is making it hard for you to run your business and grow it. And just looking at the example that you set in terms of the problems that you're dealing with and that you're helping the country solve, the fact that you're not falling into despair despite everything that you know and that you see, and you're still hopeful for the country, and I take a lot from that in my own journey as an entrepreneur. So I just wanted to acknowledge you for that.
Oh, thank you.
So final question: how do you, James Deakin, want to be remembered?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that he cared. Definitely that he cared. He wanted a better experience for every road user out there. I mean, I'd like to say for every Filipino out there, but if I'm really trying to be realistic, if I could just achieve that, creating a better transport experience for everybody, that's already a pretty great legacy. Made the roads a little safer. That would be a tremendous legacy to leave behind, because you don't think about it till it happens to you, when the roads are the great equalizer, and there's really sometimes nothing you can do to prepare for it. So you can do everything right, and then some kamote in an 18-wheeler just runs a red light and then takes you out. Nothing will prepare you for that. And once again, I'll never know how many accidents were prevented through either the drunk driving thing that we did since 2012, through the various road safety initiatives and non-stop. Every day, it's a daily thing. I'm drumming it in, whether it's subliminally or sometimes even hard sell. Always, if it's little things, like I've had to retake shows in CNN, like Drive. I remember one time I had to retake a scene, and it really caused a big problem with the crew, because they're paid per day. And when I said no, because one of the seat belts weren't on. Like, but no, what are we doing here? It's like, but we're not even featuring that. It doesn't matter. It's something I take seriously, because this is really something that, if I could just be remembered for that, maybe even just made the roads a little bit safer, create a better transport experience, that would already be great. And then, of course, your family and friends, you want them to remember you a little bit, different. I'm just speaking on the broader term. And then a person that just was easy to have around, we brought joy when he walked into the room, not when he walked out. Little simple things like that, because life is so mabigat as it is. That's why part of the raffles was part of the dynamic of the raffle, was to create this little oasis on social media, where I wanted people to experience that. You're on social media, you see all this fighting, all this whatever, and here comes this little oasis where you know it's not going to get political. You can learn something, and dude, you can win something. I mean, it's a great feeling. So be not mabigat, just create that. Just be and leave the world in just a little bit better shape than you found it. That's all we can ask for.
That's a perfect way to end the show. Thank you so much, James. Thank you so much for your time.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review the show on iTunes. It will help more people discover the show. You can also share a screen cap of the show on your social media accounts. Make sure to tag me and let me know which part of the episode you like or didn't like. All feedback is certainly welcome, so feel free to reach out to me on Instagram @KendrickCo to let me know what topics you'd like to be covered next and who you want to hear or learn from in future episodes. Until next time, do the work you want to see done, because life's too short to not be creating your life's work.